Everybody, welcome to Sunrise Daily. This, Wednesday morning?
Yeah.
All right, I'm Chamberlain. So,
well, one thing iconic about this day is that it's Wednesday, it's January 20.
Iconic?
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's today that another president will be sworn in the U.S. I am Makine. Good morning and welcome.
It's also iconic. I mean, we woke up this morning, hale and healthy. That's iconic because not everybody wakes up.
Yes, and it's also iconic that we're here to discuss all the same issues.
Yeah,
and one of which is?
Health. You know, they launched this rapid response register for, they call it what? The urban poor. Wow. Well, I know that there's so many registers we're trying to get right in the country at the moment. The health sector is a huge, always a huge area. I mean, that much we've seen this period that the global pandemic hit the world and different health sectors were really challenged, stretched to say the least. But how you bounce back, as we say in football, when you lose, how you respond to certain things. Look, there are life principles in those things. It's not just watch for entertainment. Yes, it's good. But you should pick up one or two things sometimes when you see those things because they help, you know, in life. And again, we can't forget, we have to keep highlighting that because it bears repetition. When the officials, some in the PTF did say, we didn't know that our health sector was this bad. And remember the conditional cash transfer, all of those programs, feeding the poor. Yes, there are questions about them, huge questions, and there always will be, as far as people don't feel convinced, don't feel that certain questions have been answered, they will keep asking them. There's nothing wrong in asking questions. After all, it's the people's money, so they can't ask those questions. But this one now, the register for the urban poor, we'll like to see how it plays out.
Let me take the register part of it. And that's the fact that we have, at birth, people get issued certificate of birth. At death, people get issued certificate of death. The question that's on my mind right now about this register is, do we have a data bank for those registers? Because, I mean, all of the security issues that we are having, the data we are trying to build up with the linking of NIN with the SIM, getting NIN, is all with the aim for the federal government to have a data bank, a database for all Nigerians. At least we know how many we are and the number of people that Nigerians are, that government can plan for.
Yeah.
Now, how many people have died? How many people are born per day? Do we have an idea of what those figures are? And then, how many people move from what state to what state? How frequently does that happen? Recently, the Lagos State government, put up some technology to know the number of cars that ply Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, ply certain parts of the road on a daily basis. All these are data. The number of vehicle licenses issued daily, the number of bank accounts that are active, number of bank accounts that are dormant, all these are data. How useful are these things in determining what? Just yesterday, we had this information that, was it yesterday? That the CAC is going to deregister companies that have been inactive for 10 years. We have that data. So what are we doing with all of these data? Now, this one, government is trying to launch a register of the poor. Shouldn't we know?
About that piece of a story for yesterday, I just thought, look, well, much as yes, they want to do that, but why don't we ever hear so much, or is it that we don't highlight it if at all we hear it? Maybe we might have missed it. What are they doing to ensure that companies are not that dormant for 10 years?
One of the things that MSMEs will tell you is that the survival the survival rate of every company is 5 years. If that company can cross the 5-year hurdle...
At the initial stage or what?
At the initial stage, it is likely to survive, granted. But then, there was something that I said here once and it sounded somehow. How many people have business education? How many people know how to run businesses? Anyway, that's another conversation altogether. Because these are the things that lead to poverty. If people don't know how to manage themselves, how to manage their resources, how to manage their small business, how to manage even their families, these things that the federal government is always a knee-jerk reaction. How many times are we going to launch this kind of register? You talked about, before we came on air, you talked about the social investment register that we have and all of that. How far with that one? Are we getting information about, are we getting sufficient data to verify that indeed what we are doing is far-reaching?
Information is critical to a lot of the issues that you've highlighted here, in terms of all this education and whatnot. But part of what this register hopes to do, according to what they said, is they want to get companies that have been made poorer, or those who have been made poorer as a result of COVID-19, this pandemic. Yeah, that's what it says.
Chamberlain, I go back to the fact that let us build for the long term, not just for the short term. This is knee-jerk. It is good to do it. Kakovid came up with, what is it, 20 billion?
No, this one's they're targeting mainly traders and SMEs, according to them.
In the urban
SME
centers.
Yeah.
Fine. But this is knee-jerk. Let us plan for the long term. Let's make the ease of doing business something that is long term. Let government be able to do it such that businesses don't collapse. You will ask if an average SME now, the kind of charges they have to go through from the local government, tax officer to the state government to the federal, come on. So let that environment be pleasant. I go back to the fact that we have various levels of data. Let's digitize them all so that another government if government says they want to pull 100 million people out of poverty over the next 10 years, 100 million people out of poverty over the next 10 years, what are the infrastructure being put in place? What are the policies that we must execute to ensure that we don't come back maybe tomorrow or next year to come up with another rapid response register?
We've got an opportunity maybe later today in the program to get an expert to just talk to us about some of this data. What is possible with all this NIN? What can we do? How should we progress?
You underscored the other time, if we are going to plan reasonably and long term, data is important.
Yeah, there you go. So we might as well just go ahead and take a look at some of the dailies this morning. We'll start with Nigerian Tribune and see what they focus on today. Look at that, COVID-19. Still talking about all of that, and why not? Lagos oxygen demand rises to 350 cylinders per day. Whoa, per day. As Sanwo-Olu says, 24,000 students yet to report in public schools.
How many?
24,000. Edo deploys 200 policemen to enforce use of face masks. Kano directs civil servants to stay at home, imposes fresh ban on event centers. Nigeria has capacity to store up to 400,000 doses of Pfizer vaccine. That's the FG. I don't know, sometimes you see this kind of thing. It's good for everybody to be cautious, because you need to be alive, first of all, to argue whether or not it exists or not in the event of anything. But, deploying 200 policemen to enforce use of face mask, you would think that, look, we have all these facilities in place. And don't forget, while they're doing this, I think the information that it's not just the use of face mask alone that can keep you that safe. Well, yeah, the medical grade ones can help, but whichever one is part of it, there's a huge protocol.
And something you often said each time we talk about communication, you talk about messaging, message sampling, and stuff like that.
Yeah, messaging, yes. Message design.
I don't think we have done that significantly or sufficiently or efficiently enough to our people. Because if we did, would we need to force them? I think there is a need for us to let people just get that. Look, perhaps what we have been doing is we have been passing the message of fear. What other angle can we come from to make sure that it's not just fear? I mean, maybe I should make this example.
200 policemen.
Yeah, maybe I should make this example.
Wait. They're policemen. They're not just like regular people. Yeah, and the mindset of policemen and the people.
Exactly. So
are they supposed to arrest people if they don't?
They're supposed to enforce use of face masks. You saw that video making the rounds of what happened in India, What is your face mark?
No,
You don't have
try
it?
that. Don't-
Slap them to stupor.
if you don't try, what if the guy's hand? How many people is he going to slap? Does he sanitize his hand
Well,
every
you
time?
can't even do that, here. But we need to change our
Yeah, we need
approach
to be
of the
cautious.
messaging.
But look, I think there are ways to do this. Now, part of the challenge we have is because we have what we call, I think, Harvard Business School people call it institutional voids that are there. So if they are not there, there are loopholes. There are so many gaps.
Certainly.
That's why we struggle to make things happen, because we don't have the base to make it happen. Well, look at what is the bottom strip here. 7-day ultimatum. Continue your dialogue with Fulani communities. Presidency tells Akeredolu. So you get to see a lot more on that one. That's Tribune this morning.
Daily Trust is interested in 12.3 subscribers await SIM linkage with NIN. That's the lead of the Daily Trust newspaper today, as 47.8 million phone users are cleared. FG urged to limit mobile lines possession to 2. That's what you find on the front page of the Daily Trust, as you can see. The story has its details on page 5 of the paper this morning. And right under the nameplate, Akeredolu's quit order to herdsmen inflammatory. Find that also on page 5. What's your take on that? Go ahead and share with us on our Twitter handle @Sunrise Daily Now. And so many other stories you'll find on the front page. Some of them have already been referenced this morning. 167 Nigerians lack access to hand-washing facilities. Only 167 Nigerians?
160 what?
167 Nigerians.
Is it 167,000?
I saw 167 Nigerians. It's right there on
Wait,
the
is it
bottom strip.
167 million?
167.
No, come on, it can't be.
Well, the details are on...
Just walk on that street, you count your 200 alone. Maybe
44, page 44 of the Daily Trust newspaper has
maybe
more
that
details.
must be printer's devil, as they call
wow.
it in
Are you going to cast out the devil now?
That's what they call it. That's the technical name sometimes.
All right, that's the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Markwe.
Well, this day is the next one here. Good morning, Nigerians. Looking at this day for you, you see there, OPS, that's Organized Private Sector. Second lockdown will inhibit economic recovery. That's what they say. Federal government alleges conspiracy against COVID-19 vaccines. Well, they don't have to look too far, do they? In terms of those who will take, even at the level of leadership, and those who wouldn't. Maybe they should make it compulsory and for us to see them on live television, all leaders at every level, federal, state, taking the vaccines on air. Maybe that will send a message to the public that the vaccines are safe. But you want to read that story. FG alleges conspiracy against COVID-19 vaccines. What sort of conspiracy? Looking just on top of the nameplate there, IEA cuts demand forecast as new lockdowns temper recovery. Barkindo, renewables not replacing fossil fuels in coming decades. Okay, so we continue to be optimistic about how our oil will be needed in the world economy in the coming years. Page 8 has details for you. Look at this one just beneath the nameplate. Quit notice to herders unconstitutional. Presidency cautions Akeredolu, urges dialogue in resolving security challenges, asks governors to show restraint. That story is on page 8 of the paper. Well, at the bottom there, Lawan, armed forces doing good job of reversing insecurity. Page 5 is where you'll find details. We'll leave it there for this day newspapers.
Well, let's take a look at Vanguard next. Presidency, Akeredolu at war. Akeredolu can't tell herders to leave Ondo. Presidency, my ultimatum stands. Ondo governor. So that's how much they've got. Just big lead front page here today. And North can't recover from insecurity in 100 years. Ascribe to Northern elders. So sometimes you ask yourself, why do we do certain things to ourselves? Some of the things are self-inflicted, because you have people in different parts of this country, all from the north to the south, to east to the west, brilliant minds, world-class people, all over the place, across the world, to say the least. But we keep grappling at straws. We keep struggling with some basic things about the world has moved on.
I think, Chamberlain, what you're referencing here is us nitpicking on the issues.
Yeah.
There are fundamental issues. The fundamental issue here, and dates back decades, is that of poverty and inequality. You solve that problem, you solve a tremendous quantum of the problem.
Well, there you go. That's a huge one here because, remember, they talk about our leadership recruitment process. A lot rises and falls at that stage. If we don't get certain things right at that stage, because if you get people, if certain positions are peopled by those who know that it resides with the people can do this to me, the people can ask me questions, the people can call me back, the people can decide whether I stay or move, then they will be responsive a lot more to the people. So, and there you go. Maybe that concept of employing them will sink.
But I've said it, like, when we turn our eyes away from the fact that these are our leaders, no, they are our employees. They are employees of the people. Let the people know that you employed the president, you employed the governor, you employed the senators, the members of the House of Reps. You employed them. You have a right to withdraw. What do you know? When you don't want to let your staff go, what do? You sack them, right?
Yeah.
And there are processes to it. It should be that simple.
There you go. Insecurity. Senate won't fight Buhari to please anybody. Lawan. Are people asking them to fight? Because sometimes people think, look, just be as independent as as that arm of government requires, as we see globally.
You're going far. Whether you party with the vice president, the presidency, or don't party with the presidency,
who cares?
Do what the law says you should do. Rather, let me say it better. Do what you're employed to do.
That's what people want to see.
Oversight, representation, lawmaking. Be effective at it. Because if the people who we have employed to do some things are performing their functions of oversight efficiently, will we still have the kind of inequality we have in the north and northeast?
Take, for instance, if we sort out the question, this power supply challenge, you think Nigerians care about who's at the center, who's not? Nigerians are industrious people. Look at what they do for themselves with the current circumstances at the moment. So it's huge. And then FG warns against giving NIN to others for registration. Well, we hope they put certain things in place to see how that works.
Against that one. I still don't understand why we have to give Chinese diplomats and Korean diplomats and Iraqi diplomats in Nigeria NIN. I don't understand it yet.
We'll raise it again and keep going and see if that works. Don't forget, take a look at the back page. Barca fans, 2-match ban. Rival fans say La Liga too soft on Messi. Oh. And then in the meantime, Owen accuses Salah of selfish play. So, there you go. That's Vanguard today.
The Guardian newspaper is interested in what's happening today in the United States of America, and here's how it leads. That's it right there. Farewell, Trump. Welcome, Biden. And get this. 25,000 National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. for Biden's inauguration. You can say 25,000 policemen, right? Or Mopol. Well, that's what you have on the front page. QAnon members plan to infiltrate inauguration, says FBI. And Biden to reverse Trump's policies during the first days in office. Cabinet nominees face Congress screening. All of these on the front page, but leads you to page 2. And it also promises more of that on the editorial page on page 16 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Right under that one, very, very interesting one you see. New airlines to launch amid survival and viability concerns. That's on the front page. United Nigeria, Green Africa, Kali Air scale hurdles. Experts canvass strategy, merger, stronger carriers. That leads you straight to page 2, where the story continues.
I don't know if it's about the carriers, though. Well, it's good.
Well, the concern is, how are they going to survive? Are they viable? All of these. Thankfully, all of these things that are happening will provide employment. But for how long? How sustainable are they? I think those are the questions that a good number of people want to find answers to. Lagos State oxygen need rises by 500%. Sanwo-Olu declares. The story is on page 6. Markwe.
Well, I have a copy of Blueprint for you, and they have the story, which you can make of it what you will. Security improving, military doing better. That's according to Lawan as the Senate President. Stop being economical with the truth. That's according to PDP. Troops ambush, neutralize 2 bandits in Kaduna community. Police kill 1, arrest 9 kidnappers in Niger. Gunmen attack Zamfara village, kill 15. Herders, presidency cautions as Yoruba elders back Akeredolu. Page 7 is where you'll find all the details on this security stories. You'll find a number of other stories here. Federal government thumbs up Nigerians as NIN-SIM receives 47.8 million NINs. So that's also there. Warns holders to secure their NINs. Those forwarded ahead of Tuesday deadline won't be blocked. So, there's also that problem of after you've even linked your line, you're waiting for the confirmatory message, you haven't seen it, and you're wondering, will I be cut off? Well, they say if you did it before Tuesday, you will be blocked. Are they really going to block millions of others who don't have their NINs yet, owing to no fault of theirs? We don't know. Page 6 perhaps might be able to answer your question. FRS generates 4.9 trillion naira revenue, meets 98% target. At the bottom there, poultry collapsing, 2 trillion naira investment, 10 million jobs under threat. Perhaps the Minister of Agriculture and all the commissioners of agriculture want to take an interest in this story on page 9. And they have a number of other stories for you, but let's leave it there for Blueprint newspapers.
Take a look at Daily Independent next, and their lead story, somewhat different from what you might have just seen. The Daily Independent just reads, foreign bandits invading Nigeria, wreaking havoc in Oyo. So you have that of Ondo, now you've got Oyo, you've got northern elders talking about insecurity in the north for 100 years. So different scenarios, different parts of the country. And then beneath that lead story, COVID-19, Nigeria to receive 100,000 doses of vaccines in 2 weeks. As an independent.
Well, this one you will also find here on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct. Consider malaria-like symptoms as COVID-19.
Ooh.
That's the Nigerian News Direct this morning. It's ascribed to Sanwo-Olu, the governor of Oyo State. Says 24,000 students yet to report in public schools. Demand oxygen jumps from 70 to 350 cylinders per day.
Can we supply that?
Well, I guess we'll find the details on page 2 of the paper this morning. Very, very, very disorienting, if I can say something about that one. That's the lead story of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. Markwe.
Let's look at leadership for you, and you see this one. NIN-SIM linkage, subscribers crowd registration centers to beat deadline. That's what you find on the front page. Here in Abuja, it's been decentralized. I think the main office has been closed, and then you have to go to the CDAs, I think, to be able to register. But still, does it stop the crowd? That's the question. Seek extension of February 6th deadline. Only 47.8 million have submitted NIN, that's according to federal government. NMA expresses concern over COVID-19 spike from exercise. So that concern continues to be there, but you see there, subscribers crowd registration centers to beat deadline. Dawn of a new era in U.S. as Biden takes over today. That story is also there for you. And one more quick notice, we're monitoring situation in Ondo. That's according to the presidency. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
And then look at Daily Times. They have FG unveils plan to lift, wait for that, 20 million out of poverty.
I thought it was 100 million.
Well, I'm seeing 20 here. Well, so what now? 120 million and counting.
Well, maybe, as you say, the devil is in the details.
That's
so maybe
right.
page 2 is going to say, okay, in 2 years or in 10 years.
Well, this additional 20, so maybe 120.
Okay.
So it's good. If they can lift 200 million, it's good. All the better, the more the merrier, isn't it? The more people are out of poverty, the better for the country. So there you go. That is it. We'll look at some of the dailies here this morning. Just hang on a minute. We will be back. Well, yes, Mr. Olushola Teniola joins us next. He is the National Coordinator, Alliance for Affordable Internet. Yeah, and he's also the former president of Association of Telecom Companies of Nigeria. We're still on that board. So he joins us this morning to just give us his perspective on developments concerning this NIN registration, what could happen to your SIM. Good morning, Mr. Teniola. Thank you for joining us today on the program.
Good morning.
Well, there's so much people
Yeah.
apprehensive. Some don't have as much information as they think. They're still gathering in different places. Information coming through from government notwithstanding. Well, as someone who is in that field, in that sector, what kind of impression do you have of what is going on?
I think that, good morning again to you and your viewers. I think that there are certain challenges. I think that federal government is aware of those challenges. I think just prior to me coming on, you showed Nigerians that are struggling to achieve getting an NIN so that they can link it to their SIM. I think that the challenge that the government realizes is that they understand that the risk to this project is getting NIN-SIM to be able to register the 106 million Nigerians or thereabouts that the World Bank project has supported. It's a World Bank project that wants to achieve the national identity of 150 million Nigerians. Yesterday, it was reported that the telcos had submitted 47,800,000, close to 48 million, and they still need to be verified by NIN-SIM. And typically, on average, at best, a response from NIN-SIM, it takes about 1 week from the back end to verify a submitted NIN. So whilst they're doing their verification, those NINs that have been submitted by the telcos may be rejected. So we really are looking at a sticky point of about 47, maybe 45 million NINs by the end of this month. And why do I state this? Is because if you already have a NIN, you are fortunate. I think that the situation is that there are people who are panicking, trying to achieve the deadline of the 5th of February, sorry, the 9th of February, beg your pardon. And I think that the cry for an extension is valid, because if you are queuing up or rushing to get a NIN, obviously the applications that are available from the agency just satisfies pre-enrollment. But if the reality is that there isn't enough infrastructure, and I think that the NIN-SIM has identified that they have 1,000 or thereabouts enrollment centers with the addition of 173 agents. It's a shortfall for what the World Bank expects of 4,000 outlets. So, you know, that those that are not able to use these channels, either because of affordability issues or digital literacy issues, will queue up because they don't understand the process. They need assistance from government to be able to get their NIN. And I think those who are trying to get their NIN and may have proof that they've attempted to get an in should not be punished if they own a SIM or SIMs. I think that in this day and age, we should have a program like this. A national identity number should be rolled out, but it should also consider the humane side and the reality of the constraints and the idiosyncratic nature of our environment. I think that's the situation right now. I believe that government will review all information and inputs and then take a decision whether they're going to shift that date and then set another date. So it gives every Nigerian and legible residents an opportunity to register for an in, whether they queue up or they use the electronic channels.
There's so much to unpack in all that you have said now here, Mr. Teniola, but if you could expatiate a little on that World Bank ambit. I'm wondering if we needed the World Bank or that kind of pressure to do the needful. What's the World Bank got to do with Nigerians being, numbered by their government in order to be able to give them the correct social amenities they need?
Well, I think that you need to understand that we as a country need to be able to plan. I think you mentioned the poverty level, and I think that estimates may range from 88 million to 100 million Nigerians. We have an estimated population of 200 million or thereabouts. Our population is growing at 3% per year. We need to be able to plan not only for social reasons, but economic reasons. And I think that I don't think that there's a problem with various IDs. People mention that they have BVN, they have the FRSC, you have your international passport or your driver license. I think that these agencies have every right to have an identity. And I think those identities have worked to a degree, including the BVN. What they need to do is harmonize this information, because it is very important to know that the Nigerian Population Commission should have a handle on who is a true Nigerian or who is a resident in Nigeria, and a concrete census. So we understand exactly how many people are in the country, so that the government can plan, and so that even private sector can plan, so that there is an idea as to the direction Nigeria has taken. And remember, the digital economy that we are transforming to expects that services rendered by government to the citizens are going to the right people. And the only way you can do that is to create a unique ID. So the NIN is a great initiative. Why the World Bank is involved, that's what they do. They assist countries that need assistance. And I believe that the National Identity Project has been going on for a number of years. I believe from 2012, I think the NIN-SIM Act of 2007 just demonstrates that the laws were there, but possibly there have been different administrations of government who have attempted to achieve registration or unique registrations of Nigerians and have not been able to achieve that. The government has picked this up. I remember there were media correspondence on this matter in 2018. So it's not a new thing. I think that, the deadline is a deadline and may not be a deadline, because really it is for government to ensure that all its citizens have had an opportunity to register for a NIN, and that any services that they currently are using before they had a NIN should not be just disconnected. That's not the way to go about things. Logically, you have to serve the Nigerian citizens and not disenfranchise them. And I think the World Bank wouldn't support a project of theirs being associated with disenfranchised Nigerians. So the deadline itself has to be moved. It has to be extended. It has to be based on science and data. And when I mean science, scientific evidence to prove that, the Nigerian government has done everything it can to ensure that Nigerians can achieve achieving a NIN, which is their human rights.
Well, perhaps the World Bank, now the federal government is racing against time, because the bracket of time given by the World Bank is 3 years to perform this activity. But then one wonders why, with more than 200 licensed agents, why people always only prefer to go to NIN-SIM offices. Now, the question I'd like you to address, Mr. Teniola, is this. People have their phone numbers already. And a good number of people who have phone numbers do not have NINs. I thought that it would have been a no-brainer to say, let people go to their telecom subscribers who already collect their biodata anyway, go to your telecom service provider to register for your NIN. Wouldn't that have been easier than people thronging the NIMC offices alone?
The telecoms ecosystem is about making calls and allowing consumers to get access to the internet. We, as a body, our founder founded the World Wide Web, and that was to make it easier. It introduced the technology to make life easier. So the telecoms industry in Nigeria has put itself in a position to assist for Nigerians to acquire an NIN. Remember, in other jurisdictions, it's government that actually performs this task, and only government. Yes, they might outsource it to the private sectors, but it is purely government after the private sector participants have been security cleared. So in this instance, what we have seen is that government has tried. They've tried and tried and tried over the years and have only managed, as we have found out yesterday, to register 47.8 million Nigerians. In the past, our population wasn't as great as it is now. So if we have an estimated population of 200 million, you can see that we're skewing away from those that have identities to a fraction of the population. And woe behold, if we continue on this trajectory, we will get to 2015 and we will have a huge gap because our population may go towards 300 million and we may not have registered even the 150 million that the World Bank expects. That's where the risk is. How do we expedite and scale up the ability to register all these millions of Nigerians? And the only way to do that is to have infrastructure. So NIMC needs the support of the telecoms industry because they've done something like this with the SIM registration to be able to perform this task. I remember SIM registration happened over a number of years. Any projects that involves data of this size will require a lot of infrastructure, will require funds, and will require a political will to achieve it. And I think at the moment, government is determined to try and achieve a result for this project because essentially we're moving into a digital economy.
Just a moment. The question I'm asking straight up is, do the telecom companies, do they have authority in the license given to them as licensed agents of the federal government through NIMC and the rest of them? Do they have authority to register people who do not have NINs, to give them NIN, the national identity numbers, courtesy of the federal government?
Okay, I didn't understand your question, but since you've asked the direct question, yes, because they applied for the data capture licenses under the NIMC Act of 2007. So they're in one hand acting as a telecoms company, and in the second, they're acting as an agent of NIMC to capture data.
So essentially, you're saying, one moment, essentially you're saying that the listener and the viewer right now can go to a telecom company, the listener and the viewer who does not have a national identity number, rather than go to a NIMC office where it's crowded, can go to a telecom service experience center and get a national identity number as opposed to going to the NIMC office. Is that what you're saying?
That's the intention of the licenses that they have got. And I believe there's not in addition to the telecoms companies, there are 173 agents as well that NIMC has authorized and approved to assist in data capturing.
Correct. But why is it that, because it would seem like for now, the telcos are only interested in linking SIM to NIN and not giving fresh national identity numbers to people?
Well, it's very obvious that when the list of approved agents was actually released by government, that was the tail end of last year, that they needed to acquire the data capturing equipment that meets the NIN-SIM spec. So some have decided to use certain equipment until the arrival of that equipment that they require, and I think it's the 10-finger digit capture equipment. There are agents that have been able to import those equipment and are installing those equipments. They will advertise to either their customer base or to the general public when they will be able to perform that data capturing task. But it's important to note that the time of this project is what we are discussing. And the time and timing are critical because we have a number of risks associated to the ability to achieve the February 9th deadline. And I think with all factors being borne and being considered, an informed decision would suggest that the deadline should be moved to a more appropriate timing to give the telcos and the other agents a chance to assist NIN-SIM in being able to achieve the registration of 150 million Nigerians under the World Bank project.
The federal government, even on the front pages of the dailies this morning, has continued to insist that it's February 9, the deadline is February 9. The implication is, for which reason people throng the NIN-SIM offices, the implication is that the lines of these people will be blocked as the threat or the condition has been given by the federal government. What do you see happening from February 9 going forward? Do you see the SIMs being blocked or do you see an extension?
I think that government needs to weigh up the balancing act. They're on the tightrope and a knife edge. You have a situation where the security issue has been put above economic issues. And I think that when you look at our economy right now that is struggling in a recession, and you have an industry that is contributing significantly to GDP, and a possibility of disconnecting. I think if you look at the figures that government presented and the assumptions that they've made, there's a gap of maybe 29 million SIMs in circulation that might be disconnected. I don't think government will make a decision to sweepingly disconnect 29 million SIMs. I think that would almost be suicidal. I also believe that it will impact greatly not only our sector by 43 to 51% drop in revenues overnight within a month after the 10th of February. But it will also have a ripple effect on other sectors that depend on this enabling sector. They depend on connections to our industry. Those connections are via the SIM. And if those SIMs are inadvertently disconnected because there's no correlation to an NIN, just imagine if you have a POS and you expect that POS to have an NIM just because an individual can't actually link it or has forgotten the number, then there's a ripple effect. So I think government has to consider the realities, and the realities is that you can't actually disconnect SIMs until you complete the NIN project. And the NIN project expects every Nigerian to have had an opportunity to actually register for the NIN. And if they have had an opportunity to register, that's one thing. If they tried to register for the NIN and because of the constraints that we have in terms of infrastructure in the NIN-SIM system, then they shouldn't be punished and there shouldn't be any disconnect. So I think government will review and most than likely extend rather than, commit suicide.
Mr. Teniola. Malkwe?
Just wondering, what it would take to decentralize it and make sure that people are not crowded the way that they currently are at these registration centers. But while you mull the answers to that question, I'm wondering, have you been able to get any word or, see any rationale behind the planned registration of foreigners, especially foreign diplomats who will be in the country longer than 2 years?
That's a good one, Mope, and happy New Year to you. I'll take the back end of that question. I don't understand it. I really don't. My concern, and I think we need to put this out there, generally, foreigners come into this country. We are a nation that receives foreigners for business. There are foreigners amongst us. So this adage where you've clipped it or pegged it at 2 years is an interesting one for me because those foreigners are not citizens of Nigeria. They hold foreign passports. Those are legitimate identity IDs, by the way. And even some Nigerians hold also foreign passports. So the NIN project is either a national identity project or it's an ID project per se for other reasons. So government has to answer that the reason why they are trying to implement a NIN-SIM Act of 2007 because it doesn't really make sense. But I mean, I'm sure government understands why they want to impose NINs on diplomats, simply for the fact that diplomats might be concerned that their legitimate phone numbers that they've registered in Nigeria using their foreign passports may be disconnected, as your colleagues have insisted that government will not shift the date of the 9th of February. I would like to see that happen. So, you know, the problem that government faces is that they might start to disconnect SIMs of very important people and people who operate in Nigeria inadvertently. I think that is obviously a reputational risk. On the other question, I can't really answer for NIN-SIM. I'll be honest with you, Mope. They are the ones who are driving this project. They're the ones who should be communicating effectively with Nigerians on how they would like to see this project move forward. I think government has to be empathetic to the situation. We have 47.8 million Nigerians that have NINs. We have a target of 150 million Nigerians. I mean, you just do the maths. The gap is just too wide. You know, you need a huge amount of funding and infrastructure put in place in between now and February the 9th. That both are not available. In the best of intentions, the funding is not going to come in between now and 3 weeks to fund a huge expansion of infrastructure that wasn't there in the last 8 years.
I have more questions for you, but I understand that we have to go to break now. But when we come back, I'll be very interested in your take. In some countries, for instance, in India, you cannot get a SIM card unless you present your passport, your international passport. If the idea behind foreign diplomats, you know, getting a NIN was because of their SIM card, doesn't it just make sense for them to use the numbers on the international passports to register and, you know, ensure that their SIMs are secure?
Agree. I've traveled out of this country. I've used my Nigerian passport to get a SIM in another country along ECOWAS. So, you know, Mope, there are many reasons for decisions to be made. We just give data, we provide the insights, and it's for government to make the decisions. And I hope that they're informed decisions and rational as well.
Well, let's go to break now. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. Please stay with us.
Panic, tiredness, and anguish. These are what you can see on the faces of these Nigerians at the Lagos office of NIN-SIM as the deadline for the NIN-SIM card linkage elapses. In the heat of the moment, amid the wait and struggle, this man seen here talking to the entrance keeper isn't wearing his face mask properly, thereby causing a grave danger to everyone around him. Not only that, there is no adherence to social distancing and other COVID-19 protocols. Only few people are seen wearing their face masks.
From the gate up down to this place, I know what I passed through before they could even allow me enter. It is, if you go outside and see the crowd in the gates, everybody's just like, even the ones that has, nobody knows who has disease and who does not have disease. You just contact everything, which is not nice. The stages are very, very stressful. The stages are very, very stressful. I will not lie. They need to work on this. This is not the way. Just go to other developed countries. You cannot see this kind of crowd trying to get an important an important identity card or whatever. You can't get this kind of card. It's not nice.
To many, the registration process is viewed as a cumbersome procedure, and many are already calling on the federal government to extend the deadline to enable Nigerians complete the NIN registration.
This thing is not normal. You are just suffering every day by day. Now I have been booked, everything has been corrected. I pay 15,161 naira 25 kobo for only changing of date of birth. That I was not the one that made that mistake. That was not the one that made that same mistake. I paid the money, got into this place. You need to queue and be booked for like 3 weeks. I've been coming here. This is the third week. After everything, after the registration and everything, they will now book me for another day. I will come in 6 weeks' time to collect the original copy. It's not the main ID card, the original copy.
The NIN registration process, which commenced in December, according to the government, is aimed at improving integrity and transparency of SIM registration processes and consolidate records of Nigerians.
Well, that report we saw there was really hard to watch. I mean, first and foremost, you saw an elderly man who was trying to make his way, pushing literally, and at some point his mask was down. His mask wasn't worn properly, and it was right in the face of a security officer who was trying to prevent him from coming in. So you have to ask, what special considerations have been given to those who could be vulnerable? For instance, the elderly, nursing mothers, another example, or those who have underlying health issues, because we mustn't forget that we are in the era of COVID, and much as people have been asked to wear their masks, there are questions as to how we're giving special considerations to these classes of people. Shouldn't we have special centers for them, for instance?
A good question, Mokwe, again. I can't speak on behalf of government, but you are spot on. And this is the issue. Just think of those in the rural areas, the villages, your loved ones, grandparents, grandfathers, aged, those that are suffering below the poverty line, struggling to have a living. And they can only communicate with you with a SIM card. In some cases, they don't own a mobile device. They have to walk kilometers to a nearest place where there might be a mobile signal. In a business center, they put their SIM in the phone and they call you. Maybe to ask for money, maybe just to see how you are. NIN-SIM at the moment doesn't have facilities in those areas. Yes, reactively, they've put in place mobile units, I believe. We have 774 communities around Nigeria, and some of those communities I've just described or illustrated to you the realities. They live on the lifeline of a SIM card to change their lives, to communicate with the outside world. Just because they're not able to get to a NIN-SIM center, and if they get there, they may not have, as you said, the facilities to aid them in registering. We need to have a listening government that understands the pains that the Nigerians are going through, because it's not their fault that they're not able to register for them.
Very, very correct, Mr. Teniola.
Disconnected would be very devastating to.
Perhaps that's why, the question continues as to maybe the telcos should also play that role of giving people their NINs. But then there is a challenge that I think you should be able to answer to, which is the fact that a good number of people have complained that when they go to their telecom service providers, especially those who ported from one network to another, they are unable to. For instance, I have a SIM that I ported from one network to another. So from that, I go to this other network that I ported to, and they tell me that my SIM, my data is not with them. Consequently, that number, that national identity number, cannot be used for me. I go back to my former telco. They tell me they don't have my data anymore because I ported from them. How do you explain that?
You know, you've reached or put yourself in a situation where it's cumbersome. The porting number process, MNP, mobile number portability process, is separate from this SIM NIN registration. Let me say something here that might clarify. The SIM registration database as is and the porting database should be synchronized. I've done the same as you, my dear brother, and I must say that the number I've ported to the network is the network I go to. I don't need to mention their names, and they are able to see my records. However, you might be in a situation, I don't want to speak on their behalf because I'm not the customer service center for any of the operators, but you might be in a situation where you need to escalate your case to both operators in writing to state your experience and the pains you're going through. So it's recorded. And if that doesn't suffice, because there's a clock ticking, then register that with NCC, calling 622. And therefore you have evidence that you've tried to do the needful. So when the time comes, if government doesn't move the deadline, then you should be able to seek recompensation. You know, that's why I said that this is a logistics risk and an economic risk. It's an economic risk to the telco ecosystem because if you disconnect users who have prepaid on their accounts, then you have to refund those accounts that have been prepaid. And that's not something what the industry wants to go through. So they will do everything to ensure that any case, as I said, your cumbersome case is an exception, but generally cases are addressed needfully.
Well, it almost sounds as if they're trying to punish him for porting. But we have to thank you for so why did you port? Well, next time. Now look at what he got himself into.
No. There's nothing wrong with the porting system. There's nothing wrong with the porting system.
Yeah, but the way it looks now, look at the harrowing experiences that people are going through. Anyway,
I appreciate I empathize with your situation. I give you a route to go, and that's the best I can do. And I wish you luck. You know.
We appreciate that, and we thank you for talking to us, Mr. Olushola Teniola, National Coordinator, Alliance for Affordable Internet, hoping that this doesn't jeopardize affordability of the internet. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
We're back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, some developments playing out in Ondo State, as you may have seen with some of the dailies yesterday as well as today. Well, the President's Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Mr. Garbasho, did put up a statement in relation to that subject matter. In fact, it was titled, "In Tackling Crime, Ondo State Government Will Not Act Outside the Constitution." So some part of that message did read, "What is clearly emerging is a lack of consistency in messaging, which in turn leads to various contradictions regarding accuracy and the intent behind the message." Or part of the message also went on to read, "The government of Ondo and all the 35 others across the Federation must draw clear lines between the criminals and the law-abiding citizens who must equally be saved from the infiltrators. Beyond law and order, the fight against crime is also a fight for human values which are fundamental to our country." So Mr. Garbasho signed that one off. So we've got Mr. Donald Ojogo, Commissioner for Information in Ondo State, joining us this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Well, this is generating a lot of reaction following the governor's directive for So perhaps you could just shed some light on what is going on in the light of the response we're getting today.
Thank you, Chamberlain. One thing is clear, and
we can hear you. Just go ahead. Go ahead. As long as you can hear us, go ahead. Okay, I guess we'll try and sort that out. But once you can hear us, just go ahead and speak, because I think that's most important. Well, yesterday, they did put up a statement asking the criminals who are taking advantage of the hideout to take a hike, leave those forest areas. And then there's some part of that messaging which perhaps, why the president's advisor did say it appears confusing. That if you say on the one hand, leave the place, are you then saying herdsmen who are legitimately, if I could use the word, in the forest as well, should equally leave? So how does that play out? Perhaps that's
well,
what
the argument of a good number of legal practitioners is the word you used is correct, legitimately, because according to the Constitution, you can live pretty much anywhere you want in Nigeria. But then the law also gives the governor the right on the use of the land through the Land Use Act. So it depends on what side of the divide you find yourself sometimes.
Well, let's see what divide they are on. Okay, let's try it. Can you hear us now? Could you unmute your audio so you, to enable you to hear us? Unmute yourself, please, if you can. Okay, well, clearly it appears you've not unmuted yourself, so you can hear us, but we'll hope that that happens sooner rather than later. But it is something that is playing out there at the moment. We know how dicey this can be.
It is.
If not properly put out or
It
managed.
is very, very dicey. Remember, was it on Monday or last week that the same information was put out from Oyo State, where the governor said something and the chairman of the Amotekun Corps in the state said about the same thing. The essay on security to the governor, also alluded to it. And we also understand that there is some community leader in the same Oyo State who has actually gone to a particular locality to issue his own 7-day ultimatum for the people to leave the environment. So we need to handle these things very, very delicately, because very, very correct to say that a good number of these people have lived all their lives in these communities. So we now just tell them to uproot themselves away from where they have lived all their lives. If that happens in Oyo State, happens in Osun State, happens in Ondo State, what happens in Kaduna? What happens in Borno?
But
what happens in Bauchi?
Part of the key question here is that, perception is they think that people are trying to be politically correct and as such are not attacking this matter, head on. But in another breath, you find that one thing that sticks out from some of this is if those complaints are rife in different parts, it means that the security agencies perhaps are not doing as much as the people expect them to do.
Very, very good point you've just raised there. Especially coming at a time when the IG has said, okay, we now have community police.
Yeah.
How far so far? People, the kind of allegations that for a governor to put out that kind of notice, for a governor who is a former NBA president, Nigerian Bar Association, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria and who knows the law like the back of his hands, to put out that kind of statement, most certainly he knows what he's talking about. And then we are talking about the urban areas, we're talking about the suburban areas, but we don't know what is happening in the hinterlands. He is talking about the forest reserves, where most of these people live. The farmers live there, the herders live there. But then that allegation that Mr. Owosheni put out, that some traditional rulers are colluding with certain criminal elements, is also being alluded to in Ondo State. And it's part of the things that the governor also, said. Hopefully we'll be able to get, the governor to talk to us one of these days on this, so that this information can be actually put in context. I just as the speaker, the spokesperson for the president said, I don't believe that the presidency is not aware of what is happening in Ondo State.
Some of what the governor said. Okay, well, let's go to a man, Chris Olems. He's out there on the streets of Lagos again. Remember this NIMC? Not Ondo State yet. Perhaps we'll sort that out. But Chris is in Lagos this time around, trying to take a look at some of those centers. Chris, good morning. Where are you, and what's happening where you are? Good morning, Chris. Go ahead and give us the update. Where are you and what's happening?
Oh, good morning, Chamberlain. I'm actually at the NIMC center right here in Alausa, and if you look at my background, you see that the race to register is still very much on. There are still a lot of people here hoping that they would be registered, and of course amongst them we have even those that have registered that only came to correct one or two things, and the process is still cumbersome. Some of them came as early as possible to see if they can register. But in fairness, activities are going on. At the moment, they are calling the names of those that have appointment for today. And we hope to actually go inside to see what is happening. But for now, I have two respondents who would want to share with us some of their experiences with us since they started coming. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
All right, quickly. I want you to look at me. Okay. Just share with me your experience so far.
My name is Mr. Oluwadare Taiwo, all the way from Ikorodu. I came here around 5 a.m. this morning. I've been here severally just to collect my NIMC. I've done it. I've done the processing. I've done it. I follow the normal procedure by paying 15,000 naira. Okay. By paying 50,000 naira, the money they collected from me, the due process was followed. But almost 7 weeks now, I've been waiting to collect this thing. I don't know what is going on in this our environment. I believe that what is going on, throughout the whole world, we should all practice it. The thing is getting out of hand. Despite COVID-19, you can look at the environment. Nobody's even practicing what they're supposed to practice. No social distancing, nothing. I don't know why we are going to continue like this. At least this thing, I'm supposed to do it on my phone. No message, nothing. We are here. Look at the old people standing. How long are we going to continue this?
All right. Well, the question continues. A lot of people are asking questions, and some are still very, very apprehensive about the deadline, which was supposed to be yesterday, 19th of January, for those who haven't registered. But then I think that fear has been allayed now, and they feel, okay, well, I don't think would be blocked at the moment. But then they still want to get their NIN. And that is the reason why they've stayed this long. I have someone else who would be speaking with us and sharing with us some of our experiences as well. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, talk to us. What's been happening to you? Is this your first time of coming?
Yes, this is actually my second time. The first time I came, I wasn't able to be attended to. I stayed here for a while, so I had to go back because of the old people that were there. So this time around, I'm here, and I've been here since around 6 o'clock. I even heard some people have been here since 4 o'clock, and they are still not attended to yet. So there should be an organized way in which they can do this kind of thing. It has to do with the whole Nigeria. There are a lot of people that are in the local places where they should get attention like this. Imagine everybody here. We have other places to be. We have other things to do. Staying here a whole day and still not getting what you want to do is very annoying.
Are you concerned about the blockage of your line?
Yes, it's going to affect me. It's going to affect my business. People that have my numbers, it's going to affect them. So I'm just pleading, if there's a way they can do it for us to, at least not only for me, for people that are also doing other things. It will be easy. This coming here every time and still not getting what you want to do is very annoying. Very, very annoying.
All right, thank you so very much. That is the concern of most of the people here. They are very worried, not just about getting their NIN, they are also concerned about the health implication of a gathering such as this. You know what that means. Social distancing is what is being preached as part of the protocol of dealing with COVID-19 at this moment, and yet you see the way people are packed behind me. We hopefully would go inside to see what is happening there, because they're already calling names one after the other. I think they've made significant progress, but they could still do more, and that is what most Nigerians believe. I'll leave it with you at this point, Chamberlain.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Chris. So we hope that they're able to sort all of that out. But yes, let's get back to Mr. Donald Dujogo, the Commissioner for Information in Ondo State. Well, yes, could you go ahead and talk to us about what is going on at the moment, given the response from the presidency? Could you go ahead and talk to us about what is the thinking of government now that the presidency has put up a statement about what's going on?
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. One thing is certain. Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari, by his antecedent, by his nationalistic posture, and by his patriotism that is known for, may not have directed or ordered that statement. It is certain that the president may not have directed that statement. And I'm almost persuaded to think that Garba Shehu didn't issue that statement, because that would have been a very dangerous one for the unity of this country. It would have, the Mieti Allah Cattle Breeders Association couldn't have done better than that statement. I am not assuming. I don't want to belong to the category of people who believe that Garba Shehu actually indeed made that statement. I'm waiting to confirm, and if it is true, then they may have miscommunicated properly to the people of Nigeria.
What if indeed it is confirmed that Mr. Garba Shehu actually put out that statement?
It will mean that certain persons in the presidency, certain officials in the presidency are actually out to create problems for President Muhammadu Buhari. We must appreciate the efforts of this president in his fights against insecurity across the country. Insecurity is becoming it's almost a national issue. No part of this country, is insulated from crisis. In the northeast, northwest, coming to the north central, and even the southwest, now where kidnapping and banditry, the issues are almost becoming a pandemic, so to say. So if actually he did issue the statement, then Garba Shehu owes this nation a great deal of explanation to let people know why he must take up the fight of criminal elements. I do not believe by his pedigree, he might want to offer himself as spokesperson of people masquerading as S-men, people masquerading as S-men and committed crime. I don't want to believe he will offer himself as a spokesperson to criminal elements who are hiding under S-men. Let us separate these two things. Government did not say S-men, particularly all maybe Fulani men or the Fulani people should live on those states. That is not correct. Those S-men who have occupied the forest reserves, and in this case, the forest reserves are different from the national forest. Government has not come out to say that Fulani men should vacate all the forests of Ondo State. In the attention, the focus here is the forest reserves. These forest reserves are government monuments. These forest reserves are treasures of the people of the Southwest, right from time immemorial. These were places that have been earmarked for beauty and biodiversity. There are specific purposes for which these places have been earmarked. Thousands of hectares of land in the thick forest. Unfortunately, some of these criminal elements have gone to mingle with Fulani X-men who have occupied portions of these forest reserves as settlements. And in any case, anytime victims are kidnapped, they take them directly into the depth of the forest reserves, and security agencies have had enough evidence to show that these persons are taken into the forest. So what government is trying to do is to clear the mess. Clearing the mess by way of regulating the activities of S-men. And we should also know that not only Fulani people are S-men. So I will be surprised if the Mieti Allah want to appropriate the burden of criminality. I'm surprised.
It's a State House press release signed off by Garba Shehu, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, dated January 19, 2021. If I starts off by, and which was sent to us anyway, it starts off by saying the presidency has been keenly monitoring events occurring in Ondo State and the orders by the government of the state asking herders to vacate the forest in 7 days, which he goes on to say that there's in the statement saying clearly emerging is a lack of consistency in messaging, which in turn leads to various contradictions regarding accuracy and the intent behind the message. He went on and on. So how do you, for those who just wonder, how do you distinguish between those criminal elements and then those who are staying there peacefully? Because this statement may just be saying, look, all of them may be affected as a result of that order, leaving the forest reserves as you talked about.
Well, if that statement supposedly coming from Garba Shehu, really took into cognizance the specific directive of Mr. Governor in respect of the vacation order he gave. It is specifically said, and I quote, all forest reserves in the state are to be vacated by S-men within the next 7 days with effect from today, Monday 18, 2021. All forest reserves. We did not say all forests. That would be quite preposterous. It would have been ambiguous. But the governor was explicit, he was measured in his directive, and he was very apt in describing the specific areas of target for this policy. The policy statement that came targeted forest reserves. We must separate our national forests, where herdsmen grade at permissible times normally, and our forest reserve. These forest reserves are deep into the forest. They are thick forests, and they are conserved areas. What we are saying is that most of these areas have been converted to dens of kidnapping, which we find very, very alarming. This concern has become so heightened to the extent that each time victims who are lucky to be released come out and narrate their experiences, there is a common trajectory in their experiences. There's a common part of story. So what else do you want government to do? What we are saying as a government is that we are not just elected to continue to provide roads and water. The basic objective of government and good governance is for government to be able to have the ability and the will and the capacity, where possible, to ensure that there is security of life and property. What Mr. Governor has done is not just in the interest of the people of Ondo State, It's in the interest of all residents, including the Fulani, including the Hausa Fulani community, including the Egbira community, including the Igbo community. So it will be very suspicious if a particular ethnic group or some element decides to come out and appropriate this thing to an extent that they want to ethnicize it. It was not targeted at a particular ethnic group. The target is unambiguously the criminal elements hiding under herdsmen who are doing their legitimate business. And if these herdsmen who are doing their legitimate businesses are unable to weed out the criminal elements who on a daily basis run under them, it means that something is wrong somewhere. So what we are trying to do is to ensure that people who come into the state to do legitimate business as herdsmen are registered. Unless they are saying
there are
registered, they will remain unregulated.
Well, there are still so many areas that people would like to get clarifications on this subject matter, but I guess it's something we'll continue tomorrow. But we do thank you for your perspectives on time this morning, Mr. Donald Jigo, Commissioner for Information, Ondo State.
Thank you very much.
All right, so it's time to turn to, well, it's still politics, but beyond the shores of this country, that we will talk about in a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. Well, yes, Dr. Patience Akwanabong joins us now. She is a professor of political science, Arizona State University, joining us via Zoom. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Well, your inauguration preparations might have started very early, since you're up this early as well. Well, you know, given all that is playing out, of course, many were shocked by some of those images they saw concerning what happened at the Capitol. But what is the mood at the moment, just ahead of this big inauguration day in the States?
Well, first of all, good morning. And thank you for having me this morning. The mood here, it's kind of interesting. We are all indoors. There's a high security alert, so some of us are not going anywhere today, being Wednesday. Most of us are working from home, and there's also a lot of security issues up there in the Capitol. As your newscaster said previously, there are a lot of National Guards all over the place. And right now, the DC area is kind of like almost like a garrison with a lot of armed personnel, and it's quiet. Normally, there would be a lot of festivities out there, people out there celebrating and waiting for the new administration. So, but that's what it is. And besides the security issues, we're also dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic that has really gone up. Right now, 400,000 Americans have died, and about 24 million cases have been reported. So it's an unusual inauguration, but that's what it is. And but we'll have the inauguration and we'll celebrate mostly virtually and indoors. So that's how it is right now. And we're just happy that finally we've seen this day.
Well, interesting way to look at it, Madam, given that, I mean, I don't think anyone expected this, the kind of build up to this inauguration. What happened at the Capitol was most unexpected, wasn't it? Did anyone see it coming?
Well, we should have. I think we saw it coming. It's been coming for the last 4 years. And so it was hardly surprising. The only thing that was surprising was just how easy it was for those people to invade the Capitol building. But the hostilities and the divisiveness have continued for the last 4 years, especially in the last 2 months since the election. So even the FBI and a lot of security people were not really surprised, in the sense that they did hear chattering, they did hear a lot of activities going on social media. So they should have been prepared for all of that. But again, we just grateful that the invaders did not achieve their goals. It did not get worse than it did. 5 people died and a lot of people were injured. And but it could have been worse. So we're grateful for that.
Well, how easy or difficult is it going to be for mindsets to get back to what they know of inauguration, pre-inauguration, or inauguration day itself after today's inauguration happened, especially given the fact that you still have outgoing president supporters out there who'd feel hard done by, and then the incoming president supporters who will be over the moon about the inauguration?
Well, the incoming president, Mr. Biden, has preached the gospel of unity, and he's done it before. He's a uniter, and I'm sure he'll find ways of bringing the country together. But it's going to be a lot of work, and the hostility and divisiveness will probably hinder his ability to achieve his goals, especially in the first 1 year. But I think there's hope, and if the outgoing president gets convicted by the Senate, I think that will also reduce his own capacity to cause further harm in the country. It's going to be, a long process to get back to where things were before 2016 in terms of how Americans see each other. It's really hard these days, even in families, even in families, there are some family members who are not talking to each other because of what has happened in the last 4 years. But there's a way forward, and we'll get there.
Well, just looking at the entire scenario, if he is convicted the second time by the Senate, perhaps that would have been when he's out of office as a president. So that presents a different scenario, because there was this conversation as to whether or not there will be protests by his supporters if he's convicted a second time, meaning he may not be able to vie for anything again. What do you see happening? Will it be the same? Will people still be able to go out and protest? Because it's different. He's no longer in power as a new sheriff in town, as they say.
No, I mean, I think the Senate is going to hear from the House of Representatives. So the thing is, the Democrats need 17 Republicans to convict him. They need 2/3 majority. It's not a simple majority. So if they can get that and convict him, and then they go to the next step, which is a simple vote, a simple majority vote that will bar him from further public office in the future. So again, that will cripple his followers. But so the question is, if that happens, will there be a lot of protests? Will we see what we saw 2 weeks ago? I don't think so, because now the security agencies are on the alert. And given the fact that the only ideology that the outgoing president had was this ideology of hatred, of hostility, of divisiveness, there wasn't, so that held his base together. But with him out of office and with him lacking the ability to come back to public office, it's going to be difficult for him to sustain that momentum, even though in his farewell speech, he told his followers that the movement has just started. But he's not, he was able to feed on the fears and anxieties of a certain, demographics in this country. And that, but by himself, he's not the kind of leader that will have that sustaining power to hold on to the 74 million people who voted for him. In fact, a lot of the 74 million people have also changed their minds, especially after the incidents of 2 weeks ago. So his ability to hold on to that power and to sustain that followership will be hampered by his conviction if he gets convicted and banned from taking public office in the future.
Madam, there is a very, very interesting conundrum, as it would seem. You referenced two of them. In fact, you just mentioned the third one. The first is that we are contending with COVID-19, and with the number of deaths and positive cases reported in the U.S., that's definitely something significant. There's 74 million people or less now, let's say maybe 50 million left, you know, who still support the outgoing president that is there. And then, you know, a whole number of other things, you know, that you have talked about now. The fact that there's quite a number of people in the National Assembly, the Congress in the U.S., that still toe the party line and invariably that of the outgoing president as well. How easy, in your opinion, do you think it will be for the incoming president to mend all these fences, given these challenges that we have just highlighted?
I think he has the capacity to do that. You know, he was in the Senate for many years. About 36 years he was in the Senate, and he was able to walk across the aisle in terms of working with members of the Republican Party. And a lot of those people are his personal friends. I know when it comes to politics, there's no friendship, but as you know, even in Nigeria, sometimes, you know, when we, the masses, see politicians, you know, fighting in public, we think that's it. And then at the end of the day, they're back, you know, shaking hands and socializing and all of that. So he has strong connections in the Senate and among the Republicans. That's one. Secondly, he was vice president for 8 years. So he knows where the bodies are buried, so to speak. And he was able, during the, after the midterm, after the first 2 years of the Obama-Biden administration, the Democrats lost control of the Senate, and things were really difficult for the Obama administration. But Mr. Biden, as vice president, was able to negotiate with the Republicans to get a lot of things done. And so he has that relationship with the Republicans in the Senate. And of course, now the Democrats have the majority. It's 50-50. The vice president gets to cast the deciding votes because the vice president is the president of the Senate. And so in some ways, it's going to be easier this time than it was when Obama was the president, as far as the relationship between the White House and Congress. Of course, as you know, the House of Representatives have Democrats in the majority. I think his immediate concern right now will be what to do with the COVID-19 and the economy. So I think for him, those are issues that will have bipartisan support, even though in America, the COVID-19 has been very politicized. But when you lose somebody, regardless of what your party affiliation is. So I think with him focusing on those two issues, COVID-19 and bringing the economy back, he'll have a lot of bipartisan support that hopefully will carry over to other issues that he wants to tackle.
Well, support from the level of government is one thing. Support from the American people is another. Looking at what is already happening within members of the Senate, we realize and we understand that a member of the Senate is already standing against one of his nominees, which will need the unanimous support of all members of the Senate for that particular nomination to stand. I think the nomination for Homeland Security Chief has already been opposed by one of the members who supported President Trump, and that is already beginning to put spanner in the works. And people are saying, well, they might continue to see things like that, but that is, as I said, on a level of government. From the American people, they're saying things will never be the same again from the events of the last 4 years. However, you seem to have a rather hopeful stance in terms of unity for the American people. How do you think that is really going to work, considering just how deep the levels of division and hate have gone?
I think there's hope, and I don't think my hope is baseless, because, again, like I said earlier, these 74 million people were supporting, most of them were supporting a man who was able to give voice to their own hate and divisiveness and racism and all of those isms. On the other hand, there were also people who voted for him because he's a Republican. And the evangelicals, the Pentecostals, and a lot of Nigerians in the US who voted because of the issues that the Republican Party has always supported. A small government, pro-life, and anti-gay, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of people voted for Trump because of those issues. But then the Republican Party, if it survives what has happened now, will still have that platform. Remember, in the last election, the Republican Party did not have any platform. In other words, they did not have any issues or ideology. They just said, well, whatever Trump says is what we go with. And now Trump is out, okay? So the Republican Party will, first of all, have to find a way of remaking itself, becoming the Republican Party and not just the Trump Party. And so when it does that, and if it succeeds in doing that, then the Republicans who voted for Trump based on issues like, on traditional conservative issues will still go that way. But those who voted for Trump because he was able to articulate their own anxieties and fears and hostilities and et cetera, when Trump goes out of currency, they too will have to figure out what to do with all of those things that he brought out in them. So I think there's hope. Again, when we've watched Trump up close for the past 4 years, he has the attention span of, well, no disrespect to him, of a 5-year-old. So I doubt that he'll be able to sustain that connection with these people that he didn't really care for, because if he cared for them, he wouldn't have exposed them to COVID-19 the way he did in all his mega rallies and all of that. And a lot of the big people, like the corporations, a lot of the senators, they've kind of walked away from him. So what does he have left? It's just, so for me, just looking at,
which is the issue of media freedoms in the United States, and also the fact that you're getting the first female president, female vice president into that office. First and foremost, I'd like to ask you what major difference this makes or is expected to make for African Americans and, of course, Asians, not to talk about women, the larger demographic. And what are your thoughts on media freedoms moving forward?
Okay, and first, what is just the symbolism, the fact that, like she said, she's there, and every little girl in this country, every Black girl or Asian girl or any non-white girl will know that she too can be the vice president, can be the president. So it just shows that finally, Black folks, Asian folks, minority folks have a place at the table. So even if at the end of the day she doesn't accomplish anything, there's that symbolism. She has broken the barrier. So that means it's going to be easy in the future for other women of color to aspire to that position. So what does that mean for Africans, for Asians? Again, the symbolism. And that's one. Then secondly, I think you asked about the media. Well, the media has, like somebody in Nigeria said to me, the media has been compromised. It's really difficult now to, I mean, a whole lot of us, it's a case of unto thy tent, or Israel. People just watch the channel that affirms their own biases about life. And so we'll have to, so the media in the US is kind of trying to also restructure itself and reflect on what it has done in the last 4 years and what its role was in creating the kind of situation that we ended up in with 2 weeks ago. I think you asked a question about African diaspora. Was that the question? I think you asked for
if you want to answer that, but I didn't. I just asked about media freedoms.
Yeah, media freedom. Yeah, well, the media is free here, which is sometimes it's actually a problem, which is something I shouldn't say. I used to be a journalist, so I shouldn't say media freedom can ever be a problem. But the thing is that the media here is starting to self-reflect, to wonder where it went wrong, because some of the media outlets here are so biased that you don't even know, when you read a news story, you don't know how much of that story is accurate or what is spin. And so, so that's also one of the things that have suffered in this country. But the media is free, that's for sure. But the question is, free to do what? Free to build unity, community, or free to continue to build the hostility and hatred going on that we have seen in the last 4 years.
All right, and thank you very much indeed for your time very early this morning. I might add Dr. Patience Akmanobong, Professor of Political Science, Arizona State University.
Thank you. And
all right,
have a wonderful day, you guys.
You too.
Bye.
Okay. Well, we got some response here. This one is talking about Ondo security from Sam says, the situation in Ondo and other states is a result of the failure of the federal government of Nigeria to tackle the insecurity and banditry head on. Certainly, the governors cannot fold their hands helplessly while their citizens are killed and kidnapped daily.
Fola is interested in the NIN-SIM dilemma that we talked about the other time. The simple solution to the NIN crowd challenges is a queuing software that can issue date and time to report, as well as the turn numbers at the relevant venues, while human operators keep to those timings and the laid-down procedures after an online booking.
Well, Razaka Dekoya says, I am blind, talking about name registration difficulty. I have visited NIN-SIM office in Abuja thrice, yet unable to register. Sad. Help. I think that whoever is listening needs to do something about, vulnerable people with disabilities, elderly people, nursing mothers, pregnant women. These classes of people need to be given special consideration.
Dr. Benwosa and Andrew, we also do have your messages. So what Dr. Benwosa says, as a matter of fact, a system of self-registration through customers' mobile phones should obviate the need for NIN-SIM registration centers. So many solutions.
Well, you won't have enough of them, because one of the questions that I was asking is, what happened to the booking system?
Ask you tomorrow. Well, that's the show today. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain. So
you have a knack for pushing it all till tomorrow, right?
There's a time that's pushing it, not me.
Am I Makinde? Have a wonderful day, guys.
You must have some dollars to pay for this time.
Despite the obstacles, just stay safe out there. Thank you. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.